We're gonna carry on with the tag teaming. So I'm gonna ask Tammy to come back up again, and she's going to be tackling celebration for us.
I do say celebration. Which one do I say? Now I'm confused. Celebration, and I get ripped off all the time in the office. It's not just Erwin that gets ripped off. Okay. Yes. Okay, quickly. We haven't forgotten about the first 100 people, in case you were wondering. The keyring was not your gift. We did not trick you and give everyone one. This is your lovely gift. Okay, you get a book and not just any pen, guys, but a pen that is going to be branded when the storehouse gets them to us, and a highlighter on the other side. I am excited about this. Where are the rest of the nerds? Okay, so this is the gift that we do have for you. This one says Jason DeToy. It even has your name on it. No, you can't have it yet. There we go. But the warehouse made a mess up, and so the pens have not arrived, and we don't want to give it to you without the pen. So we will let you know on Sunday how you can get your gift. We will also send you a WhatsApp if you were part of the first 100. Okay, so if you get a WhatsApp, you'll know that it's you, and we'll tell you how to come and collect your gift when we have it. Okay, start the clock. Celebration. Okay, have you ever been to a restaurant, or maybe it's even a friend's house or a clothing store, and you leave just feeling like, yo, that was nice? Hey, ever been anywhere where you just like you can't put your finger on it, like, yo, the food was good, or but there was something about it that was just nice, and it makes you want to go back, right? That's what we want at church. I believe what that thing is it's a life-giving culture. It's a life-giving environment. When you're at a friend's house where they just get along, and there's something there that you're like, flip, I want my family to be like this. Or you go to a restaurant and it actually looks like the waitress really enjoys what she does. I think she actually likes her job. She's so nice. She's so friendly. She's so, there's something there that is just, you want to repeat it. You want to go back. You want that. Okay? What we call that in church is joy. Okay, it's called joy. Okay? When people walk in this door, we want there to be a life-giving environment that is filled with joy. Where people come and they say, oh, I don't know what it is, but there's something about that church. There's something about that church that just makes me want to go back. There's something about the people there where I think they actually like life. I think they're actually happy people. I think they actually believe what they say, what they're telling us. It's real. There's something genuine inside of them that I want that. I want what they have. And so if we're going to grow, if we're going to get visitors and unsafe people into this building, we need to have a life-giving culture. Okay, one that is filled with joy. And you know that this is biblical as well? Okay, celebration is biblical. If you read the stories, the Old Testament with the Israelites, do you know how many festivals they were commanded to have? It was like, don't kill anyone, don't lust, don't do this, and make sure you throw a party. That was commanded. They gave 10% of their money for tithes, but do you know that they also had to keep a second 10%? Do you want to know what that 10% was that they had to save every month? They had to put 10% aside for a whole year. Do you know what they did with that money? They threw a party. Okay, God was like, I want you to save this 10% so that we can have a party, so that you can celebrate, so that you can buy wine and buy meat and have a great celebration together. You know, slip it in there. I'm joking. One glass. Half a glass. There we go. But why? Why do we have a God that needs us to celebrate, that commands us to celebrate? Because He knows life is not going to always be easy. Okay, the Israelites they were going into this land where it's flowing with milk and honey, but there were also giants. There was going to be hard times. It was going to be difficult. And when it was difficult, he needed them to have a rhythm and a routine of celebration so that even when they didn't feel like it, they were celebrating because they could think back and say, God brought us out of Egypt. God brought us out of here. God did this for us. And remember, and when you focus your mind on what God has done for you, what you do have, it produces joy. No matter what you're going through, you're like, no, God brought us through. God has us here. He's going to do it again. We sing that song like, God, you did it for Moses, or whatever the words are of the song. Like, he's going to do it again. Okay, so we want a culture in our church where we celebrate in everything, every moment. So we're going to spend money on it. Okay, we're going to buy crazy expensive tickets. We're going to, okay, they're not that expensive. The shop we used to buy them for doesn't sell them anymore, so it's a problem. So if you can source tickets for us, let us know. But we're going to spend money on cupcakes outside for certain things, giving chocolates away, celebrating mothers on Mother's Day, because celebration matters to us, because it produces joy in our hearts. And so practically, a way to, with so many notes here, guys. I may have written a sermon, Jason. No. Okay. Philippians 4. Okay, Philippians 4 from verse 6 to 8 is great, but I'm just going to read the last verse. It says, and now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. This is how we produce joy in our lives. You know, our value used to say choose joy. And I always struggled with it because I was like, how do you just choose joy? Like, I don't feel very joyful, guys. Like, this is happening. I have 3 crazy children and I didn't sleep last night and I must come to church. And how do I just choose joy? Like, how do I, make myself be joyful? Because joy is an emotion. It's an emotion. It's a response to a situation or to a thought or to it's a feeling. You can't change how you feel, but celebration is a discipline. It's a practice. That's something you can do. It's something you can choose. And so we want to be a church that chooses to celebrate all the time. So if I've had a hard night, I can wake up 15 minutes before I come to church. No, 15 minutes extra. Do you have to get dressed? 15 minutes extra, and I can spend that time saying, okay, what do I have? What do I have to celebrate? You know what? I have a husband who loves me. I have somebody who's committed to me. You know what? I have legs and arms, and I am healthy. I can go to church, and I can worship God with my body. Come on, that's something to celebrate. I have food in the cupboard. I'm going to go into the kitchen now. I'm going to make a meal before I come to church. I don't have to come to church hungry. I can celebrate that. Okay, what else do we have? We have good friends in our lives. We have this, we have that. And what I'm doing is I'm choosing what to focus on. I'm choosing what I think about. And when you think about things that are good and pleasing and perfect, it produces joy in your life. And then I come to church and I'm ready to greet people and I'm ready to love people because I have joy. And it creates this life-giving atmosphere. And so I really want to encourage you guys to do this. Do the practice of celebration in your everyday life. Because we don't just want to be joyful people here on a Sunday, and then people see you at work and they're like, is she at church? Like, wow, okay. Like, we need to be joyful everywhere. Your husband shouldn't be, or wife shouldn't be sitting at church being like, sure, she's so nice here. She could bring some of that home. Okay, we need to, so in your marriage, what can you celebrate? Even if it's hard at the moment. There's hard times in everyone's marriage. What can you celebrate today? With your children, when you're raising kids, what can you celebrate in them today? At your work, okay? You might go through periods where you love your job. You might go through periods where you hate your job, okay? We've all been there. I'm joking. What can you... 2 weeks ago, no, I'm joking. Jokes. Okay, what can you celebrate today, okay, in your job? There must be something. God, I have a salary coming in. That's something to celebrate. Okay, in your friendships, at school, wherever, like find what you can celebrate so that it can produce joy, so that we can actually be joyful people, because do you know that you can't give what you don't have? So we can invite people here and we can want to give them Jesus, but if we haven't actually experienced God's love, God's joy, God's peace, God's patience, His kindness in our lives, how can we give it to somebody else? How can we call other people into this if we don't have it ourselves? And Jason once asked this question, and I'll end with that. In one of his preachers, he said, would somebody want Jesus based on your life? Would they want what you have? Do they want to become who you are? And that's a tough question. And I'd like us to think about that as we think about celebration. Like, can I give what I have? Am I inviting people in to say, hey, come and be who I am. Come and do what I'm, as I follow Jesus, come and follow me. Like, do they want to be who we are? Are we joyful? Are we experiencing God's peace? Are we experiencing God's love? Are we people of love? Okay, we need to become first. We need to experience first. We need to be who Jesus is so that that can overflow to others. So that when people walk in this door, or they walk into your workplace, or they walk into your school, they're like, there's something about those people. There's something about that environment. It's life-giving, and I want what they have. And then we can give them Jesus. Cool.
Sure, how do I follow that? Well, I'm just briefly going to mention or speak about warmth. If we can just have warmth up. We invest and invite and are warm and welcoming because every person matters to God. That is such an important value, and normally you might hear of that as being hospitality, but it's so much more than that. And I know for myself personally, I am somebody who can get focused on the task and needing something to be done, and I can easily forget to be warm. Even though I might be feeling warm towards the person, Jason often says to me, let your face catch up with what you're thinking. Because when I am focused on something, my face hasn't caught up. And so I have to remind myself that actually it's always people before task. And it's, and it's important to make people feel warm in your space, in your environments. And for me, personally, there are many, many people, but I'm just going to pick on these two couples where I have felt the most warmth in their homes is Josh and Linnell. When you go there, you know you are wanted. You know you're going to get served. You know they're going to ask you all the time, what do you want? There's a warmth. There's a invitation to just be and to that you wanted. When I go to Tony and Pauline, Pauline is Tony and Pauline are passionate about warmth and hospitality. I feel like I can just relax. I can just be. Everything is done. It's like you served, but you don't. But it's just it just feels like it's coming from a place of like, we wanted you here. And so when people walk into our building on a Sunday or a Friday night or any other night of the week, if we have a life group or an event, I want people to know that we wanted them here. We want them to feel welcome. We want there to be a warmth. And so if ever, if ever my face hasn't caught up to my feelings, you're allowed to say it to me nicely. Okay, I give you permission. Jason, very nicely, okay? You'll notice that I wasn't speaking to my husband, Jason. I was speaking to that Jason because he's very direct. And and I'm also very direct, so I relate. I can also be like, listen, Bronwyn, can you just go and do that now? But I don't actually mean it like that. But I have to be reminded all the time, listen, you got to you have to be warm in the way that you, so, maybe Jason gave me this one on purpose, because he was like, no. Okay, well, you weren't denying it, so it's fine. But for those of you that are involved in kids' church, one of the best books I ever read in my whole life was when I went to go and work at Alcana as a student teacher, called How to Really Love Your Children. It's Dr. Ross Campbell, I think. And the one thing that they said there is when you speak to a child, you have to get down to their level and speak to them eye to eye. And that literally means going down and say, hey, my sweetie pie, how are you? I'm so excited to have you here today. Come, let's go and draw a picture together. It's having somebody walk into the cafe and you can see that they're nervous. It's taking them by the arm. Obviously, there's personal space issues. You don't want to make them uncomfortable. And saying, come, may I offer you a coffee? And actually walking with them and asking them, have you been here before? We haven't met. There's a warmth that is needed when we embrace people that are coming into this place for the first time, and a warmth that is needed when we are working in a team and we want people, you know what, you don't know. Like last night, they've got 3 kids, but guess what woke them up? Tammy and Reese, their cat. So maybe they needed a bit of warmth to just, you get here, you're tired, you're overwhelmed, you're stressed, and a warm invite, a warm, what's the word I'm looking, when you welcome, thank you, Marco. A warm welcome can change the whole atmosphere. Thank you. Ivan, Percival.
Yeah, before I start, I just want to say, guys, don't you find this logo amazing? I just have to say it. Yeah, see. So I don't have a legacy T-shirt like the other speakers, but I'll blend in. The jersey Esmeralda picked out for me blends in. And Josh was the only other person that got the memo. Josh. I'm talking about generosity. Yeah. So again, guys, another conversation. So help me out. My personal experience. What does it mean for me? How did it change me? Guys, I wasn't hinting, eh? I'm just saying, I wasn't hinting. I'm not going to do what Jason did, but that was inappropriate. Sure. No. I felt it. Sure. Okay, guys, let's get serious. Why should we be generous? Simple. That was a question I asked myself. Because God is a generous God. He gave His only Son for us. That's it. So the order is important because that will drive the motive for generosity. And once that order is there, that was something that impacted me on generosity. So, guys, for me, the ways that I can be generous, there's a lot of other ways. You guys may disagree with this, but for me, it's money and possessions, time and energy. More importantly, energy, and then serving. So those were just my broad categories, right? So how did this change me? Is actually as recently as April 2022, this year, God was pressing upon my life and telling me, look, Ivan, open up your life. So I kept hearing that. You know when you're hearing it in different places it could be like someone sends a message, people talking about it, and then it landed when I read 2 Corinthians 6 verse 11, live openly and expansively. And I was thinking, like God, that talks about taking more risks, but I'm a giver. I'm a risk taker. I give 20% tips. I'm generous with my smacks. I'm generally generous with people. But guys, I was marking my own homework. And that's sometimes a problem. So God was Because we can. Like, that's where blind spots comes in. Because you're marking your own homework. And sometimes you're allowing other people to mark your homework. But God's got to be the one that tells you, because it's like an onion ring. You might not be bad at something. I might never be able to be as generous as someone else. But what's the version? So you God for me, Jesus for me, what would it look like? So we have to allow God to do that. So then God took me on the journey, because I opened up my heart and I said, okay, Lord, what are you trying to tell me here? And God highlighted 2 areas, money and serving. Serving actually surprised me, but I was marking my own homework. So money, God was talking to me, saying, this issue of stewardship versus faith. So when we were preparing for the vision offering, Esmeralda and I were talking, not discussing whether we should give, because we knew that was a no-brainer. It was about how much are we going to give, right? So Esmeralda had so much faith, and she came up with a big amount. The amount scared me because I was more on the stewardship side, right? I was opening up my spreadsheet, looking at my budget, forecasting I'm not even joking, forecasting the economy, where the interest rate is going to climb again. I know this because I am in that sector. So I was checking, okay, had all my stuff, I had my plans, what we're gonna need to fix. Cars are going to have to go for maintenance in 2 months' time, etc. You know, all that stuff, right? And then we had time, because we started early, we started talking about it early, and we said, let God talk to us. So then I went, and I want to get this right. I asked God, could we afford to take this leap of faith? You see what's wrong with that question? And God answered, spreadsheets and budgets will not provide for you. That's my job. It's my responsibility. What hit me was that it's God's responsibility to take care of us. He's been doing it. So guys, there's nothing wrong with good stewardship. Like, that blesses our family. It gives our family security and all of that. But the order is important. The order is important. Why? Because then you can respond with an open heart, where you actually allow God to, have the faith for God to actually then provide. And guys, I promise you, I received a tax refund. I never get a tax refund. And we actually received the tax refund. So listen, it's not about the tax refund, because it's more about the fact that it's about what God did in my heart. But I think also God was just showing off and saying, okay, you know what? You listen to your wife, number one, but also the fact that you're taking this leap of faith. So what does it mean for me is basically to position myself and get the order right. So still be a good steward, but just remember, God is the provider. He provides, and you just do your bit, but always have an open heart. So that was the one revelation for me on this. On the serving side, God was challenging me on selective generosity. So let me explain. Saying yes to serving only when it fits my criteria, right? That's what I was doing. So, sorry, I'm now doing my glasses. Saying I am comfortable, I'm only saying yes when I'm comfortable with something, right? I'm only saying yes when I have enough time to prepare. When I'm saying yes, when it fits, I'm asking the question, how does it fit into my long-term plan? So guys, I was doing all of these things because, an example, I don't like the stage. Like, I don't like to be up here. That's a challenge for me. So when I'm being asked to be on here, those are the type of things that I was resisting. And to my surprise, as I pressed into that, I always find that when I'm out of my comfort zone, God operates through me the best. Not when I have it all together, etc. It's when I'm pushed out of my comfort zone. And at church, I promise you, this is where God has allowed this to be the ground for me to actually be pushed out of my comfort zone. And I'm really grateful for that. So yeah, that was the two things that basically how generosity was developed inside of me. So how will this value help us get from the small boat to the bigger boat? Right? That's the question. For me, it was obviously getting the order right. God is the provider, and then just balancing that faith versus stewardship. Otherwise, we are limiting God. And here's the idea. I was actually realized that when you live a selfish life, what happens is you actually can't be generous when you're living a selfish life, because this is what happens. Just want to do an illustration. Sorry, it's not going to be inappropriate. This is, if you're living a selfish life, then you're living a life like that, right? Whereas if you're living a generous life, this is what's happening. You're actually opening up your hand. And so that's one of the things I feel I need to do. I need to take more risks and live less selfishly, because it's a small life. A selfish life is a small life. A generous life is a large life. So that's where God is challenging me to live a less selfish life, right? So, and then to position myself for generosity. Practice gratitude. Tammy spoke about this earlier. Practice gratitude, because then the more grateful you are, the easier it's going to be for you to actually be generous. To make giving a habit. It's like a muscle. Just make it a habit. Keep giving in all different areas, and then that'll grow generosity, right? And that's eventually going to be who I become, a generous person. Remember to do it cheerfully. So also practice when you're generous. Practice, even if you have to fake it for a while. Practice it, because you need to give it cheerfully. And then I'll end with this, guys. Generosity expands capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. So in this very last part of the last session, in a moment, I'm going to ask the team to just do an item for us, and you're going to have an opportunity to just reflect a little bit on everything that's been shared, and maybe just giving God the space to point anything out that He's wanting you to respond to and to shift with. But in terms of our last value, it is this idea of compassion. And for that reason, I want to go back to the scripture we read last night very quickly. So if you take a look at Matthew chapter 9, verse 36, guys, you can just go right down to that last passage. Again, it said that when Jesus saw the crowds, He had compassion on them, right? So, and that original word actually speaks to being moved. Like it's not just shame. It's like there's an actual concern. There's a burden. In fact, if you look up the definitions, it refers to your bowels even. Like you're moved deeply, right? So He had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. He said to the disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask Him to send more workers into His field." So we know that compassion is something that Jesus experiences, that God experiences towards people. We have the passage on the wall about love God, love people. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, your mind, all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That also speaks about compassion. Now compassion can be narrowed down to one or two very specific areas, but what I did was just take a quick look in the New Testament, just in the Gospels, as to where that exact word, so that original Greek word, where that was used in different contexts within the Gospels. So where was compassion expressed? A couple of examples, what I've just mentioned now, where Jesus looks at people and He's concerned about them being aimless, directionless, leaderless, rudderless. Matthew 14, verse 14 refers to His compassion towards the sick. That's also in Matthew 20, verse 34, Mark 1, 41. But then in a couple other passages, it refers to having a compassion for those that are hungry. So there's also very tangible, real need. He was actually burdened. He had compassion on people that had gathered around that hadn't been able to get home. They hadn't been able to have, there was a burden for those that were physically hungry. In Matthew 18, it makes reference to a compassion, so a mercy that is offered in the case of needing forgiveness. So to offer forgiveness requires compassion. What was very interesting for me is that in Mark 6, verse 34, it talks about Jesus landing on the shore and the people gathering around and him being moved with compassion, and so he taught them. So compassion also compassion moves to teaching, to forgiving, to serving, but it also moves towards teaching. In other words, compassion actually drives everything. Everything. He had a compassion on a mother who was mourning the death of her son. And in the story of the Good Samaritan, which is, by the way, that passage on the wall there, that's the story that's the passage that goes into the story of the Good Samaritan. He had some religious scholars trying to trick him, asking him a question, what's the most important commandment? Jesus answers with that, and then trying to vindicate himself, the guy says, okay, but who is my neighbor? Because Jesus agreed with him, yes, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. So he's asking, okay, so who's my neighbor? Then Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan, which has just become a metaphor for a kind person. But we miss the significance of how radical it was that Jesus made reference to a priest who walked past his own kind, so his own people, and ignored him. And then a Levite, which is kind of like a volunteer, but someone that's kind of serving a ministry in the church, who also ignored him and moved on, also his own kind. And then this person who was not of his kind, not of his tribe, where there was this animosity, where there was this historical difference. He makes reference to this guy that, again, he sees him. He's also moved with compassion, and he does something about it. And Jesus says, who's the neighbor in the story? And they're like, the Samaritan. Because there's this heart that is moved by compassion, regardless of differences, of distance, etc., etc. And there is a mercy, there is a kindness. And then lastly, in Luke 15, the story of the prodigal son, it talks about the father having compassion and running to his son. The point I'm trying to make is that compassion actually drives everything. Whether it's feeding, being a part of healing, caring, showing mercy, the grieving, leading, teaching, compassion should actually drive everything. And so the question that I'd like for you to consider as the team do this item, without any pressure and without feeling like you have to formulate something, just to have an attitude, a heart that's just open to God, saying, God, is there an area right now where you're wanting to, and it could be a few things. Maybe he's just wanting to reaffirm, reassure. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Carry on. Well done. Keep being faithful. Or maybe there is a change. Maybe there is an invitation to do something about something that you've been seeing. Maybe there's an area of ministry, or maybe there's an area at work, whatever the case is. I say this last part very cautiously because it can so easily be interpreted in a negative, manipulative way. And honestly, I think before the Lord that that's not my heart at all. But sometimes people ask the question like, why don't you have this person? Or why don't you have someone serving there? And sometimes the answer is they're sitting in church. They just don't want to. And that's okay. I don't want to force that pressure because it has to be out of obedience. It has to be out of compassion because it won't live very long, right? But just like Ivan gave a couple of examples of where he's allowed God to point things out to him, I'm just asking you to ask God, is there anything that you're just wanting to bring to my attention that I would be moved with compassion and do something about it? Is that okay? So I'm going to hand over to the team, and then after that, we're going to wrap up with a couple more awards.